Okay, hi, and welcome to the UX Energy Podcast. My name is Jonah McLachlan. I'm your host, and we're also joined by Tomer Sharon. Tomer, you are incredibly welcome. Thank you so much also to the audience who are joining on YouTube for the first time. This is really cool that people are joining, and this is my first experiment with this. So, Tomer, welcome.
Hello,
Hopefully,
hello.
all the tech works, and you know yourself working in tech all these years. It does let you down occasionally. But welcome to you, Tomer, and to the audience watching. We've got people from North Macedonia, South California, and a few others watching. So I think we're working. Awesome. How's your day going so far, Tomer?
So far, so good. Just finished my back-to-back meetings, and now I'm free to do some work. So before I do, let's have a fun conversation.
That sounds amazing. So Tomer, you've got quite a bit of a resume, and if you do stalk your LinkedIn, you know yourself. You've got author, got a military background, ex-Googler, head of UX research, and now CEO. But CEO, I guess in this case
CXO.
means, yeah, Chief Experience Officer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's been kind of key bookmarks or highlights from your experience? Like, what's been sort of favorite parts from your career?
Oh wow. I'll be a diplomat for 1 second, and I'll say that you know, each thing or company in my career taught me something, and there are definitely highlights and lowlights from each one. Um, Google was a highlight for sure. Not that it's perfect and that everything there is as it's supposed to be, but most of the things were, at least at the time. I think now things are changing there, but at least at the time, Google was very good to me. Um, Also, kind of publishing my books, although writing a book is probably the hardest thing I ever done. It's the hardest job I've ever done. So I loved kind of. It sounds like I'm joking, but I'm not. But I love planning the books. I love holding them and smelling them, and I hate anything in between. So yeah, I would say these are two highlights from the past. Currently, also, this is the first time that I kind of decided to leave corporate America and start my own company with several partners. Um, Definitely a highlight. Um, it is a roller coaster, as they say. They were right, and in the same time, um, I enjoyed very much every day of it. So yeah,
Yeah, and I guess we were just saying earlier that working in tech, it's got a huge benefit of being able to almost determine your own hours, and prioritize your own things, whether that's family or just work-life balance. How does that
yep,
work for you compared to like previous companies that have maybe been a little bit more, you know, all or nothing?
yeah. I think exactly a month from today, right? March 16th is going to mark, at least for me, 3 years of working from um, full time. So in my current startup, we don't have an office. So I think we are lucky. I feel lucky. I feel much more productive this way. When I need to, I go out and meet people. But in many cases, for me at least, to be more productive um, and more kind of in control of my time, I think it's much better. I live kind of, I want to say close to New York, but in the morning and evening time, when you're either driving or even using public transportation, it's not fun, and it's wasting a lot of time. So yeah, we used to kind of listen to podcasts, but on the way, but I feel I could. At least from the past 3 years, I could be much more productive during this time, and I enjoy kind of getting to know my kids again.
Yeah.
I would say. I'm not sure they want that all the time, but I do.
No, that's amazing. It's great that I think as well COVID opened up a lot of remote opportunities, which has been good as
Yep.
well. So whilst you have this sort of wealth of experience, you've also been publishing, as you said. You've got a Gumroad. I checked that out. It's pretty cool. I don't know how regularly you're kind of getting like loads of sales through that, but still, it's awesome that you've got templates. You've got Measuring Happiness book and other courses as well. So it's worth checking out. And then, yeah, the big one is the Rosenfield Media one, validating product ideas. You said that that was like a slog for you, but like how long did that take from planning the book, getting the deal, contract through to getting your first physical copy in hand?
Wow. From first thought or kind of conversation to date of publication, never thought of that. But I would assume it's around, I would say, 2, 3 years. But some of this time is just thinking, not doing anything. So I could be thinking of something for a year, just talking with people, not doing much. Um, I would say the hard work is about a year of getting to the first draft.
Yeah,
That's
no,
that's
awesome.
the hard part.
Well, if it's okay with you, and I know we wrote this a while ago, but it'd be interesting to just see how it's evolved and how even your practice may have changed and adjusted through even more experience. But the sort of one of the key factors of the book that I liked was your simple definition of each stage: strategize, execute, and assess. While I get that on screen and maybe share it just with the viewers, um, what kind of helped you? What made you kind of get to that sort of concise definition of here is UX research practice, and how
Yeah,
did you decide on those sort of three aspects? And I'll bring it up just so that everyone can see
yeah,
it. Here we go. So strategize, execute, and assess. What
yeah.
what tell me the story behind this graph because it's key to the book. Like it's in every chapter almost, right?
I'll go even a step back, and
Sure.
I'll get to that. So what I did is I interviewed a lot of people, either founders of startups or product managers in enterprises, and also at some point the kind of I thought responsible adult VCs who invest in these startups. And I wanted to know mostly from the founders and product managers, what questions do they ask themselves related to their users along the way. And I gathered many questions. I can't remember, but I think it was maybe 200 questions, something like that, different questions. And then with the help of I think 50 of them, 50 people, um, we went through a card sorting exercise, and we kind of organized them into groups. And there were 8 groups, and I summarized each group in one question, and each question like that became a chapter in the book. And in the book, I kind of, for each question, I pretty much specify, okay, how do you answer this question with lean research, with actual people who are supposed to be your users or are your users, depending on the question, um, kind of input from them. And to kind of organize that even better, I honestly, I can't remember if I came up with this or I use it because I saw it somewhere. But the strategize, execute, and assess are stages in development of products that I thought would be helpful for people to kind of put those kind of questions under a magnifying glass, if you will, and say, okay, when is the best time to ask and answer that question? Because in many cases, I hear, and I've experienced that myself as well. Let's say I'm asked to do a usability test just before launch, and I'm smarter. I know that it's probably the worst time possible to come up with more feedback for your product, especially if this is the first usability test that you do for that product that you're about to launch. Because what's going to happen is that you're going to get a long list of defects in a time which is going to the worst time to get a long list of new defects of the product. And what usually happens is that you don't take care of that before launch. You say, okay, we'll take care of that after. And then after people start using the product and you get feedback and you get requests, and the list of defects either is irrelevant or completely, you just don't have time to deal with that. So it was important for me to indicate what is the perfect timing to ask and answer each of these questions. What you see here on the screen is the question is what do people, and I kind of indicate for each question when is the best time to ask it and other times that might be good. So this is a question that's pretty good to ask in every in every
Yeah.
stage. You'll benefit mostly if you ask it early on.
And these circle points really are helpful, especially for those who've never done this before, people who are brand new, who maybe don't know the best tool to get out of the box and to start using,
Yeah,
and even more valuable for
very
people
true.
doing startups, right? Who know that they need to go do some market research or user research, but they don't know when and how. So I think that like this is my favorite bit from the book, definitely, just this diagram that
Cool.
keeps coming up. Yeah.
Not just that, another very hard thing, even for experienced researchers, is to match a technique, a research method, if you will, with a question. What is the best technique to answer a specific question? I don't expect people who never did research or did a little of it to know that it's sometimes very complicated to pick, and it's and not all of them are easy. So it was important for me to kind of do that. It's kind of implied from the book. I don't say that, but just by the fact that I say, okay, here's a question you might have, and here's how and when you answer it, I think that's extremely helpful for people who've either again never done it before or did some of it.
Yeah, and awesome. And with this, I'd love to transition into research methods as a whole. And I've already got a
Mhm.
few questions coming through of like, what methods work best, or, what are good examples of questions to ask. And just before we maybe go into details of the book, we'll wait for you, Justin, don't worry. But when thinking about these methods, I've found that there's a lot of boot camps online that almost have a very rigid structure for how you should do research. You do a survey, you do a competitive analysis, and then you publish your prototype on Figma, and that's your case study. And it's a very, very limited view, and I would say damaging to most case studies out there.
Yep.
From your experience, what are some research methods that are completely ignored or just misunderstood? Why is that? Why is that?
Can I start from the opposite? I think there's you just mentioned a method that is not in the book, and there's a very good reason for why it's not in the book.
Sure.
Surveys, which is, I would say, the method that's easiest to implement. Uh, Mind my French, any monkey can launch a survey in 2 minutes,
Right.
um, but it's probably the hardest one to do right. And it's very, very popular, especially among startups, because of how easy it is to launch. It's very, very quick to put something in front of people's faces, and you get responses. But I would say it's so hard to do that right that I prefer not to include it at all. So it's not even an option. And I always highly recommend people to not do that. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I guess shallow research, or shallow methods equals shallow research insights, right?
I don't know if it's shallow. I think
Maybe.
it's just I've seen. I mean, a survey is a great technique when you know what you're doing, um, but most people use it in a very wrong way. Um, and I see sometimes surveys. I get these as anyone is getting surveys. I get these from time to time, and I'm like, why they're asking this question here? Um, yeah, I mean, I can talk about it for hours, but when you ask through a survey and you ask even the same question when you talk with a person, you get so much different insight and input that it's just another indication that a survey is probably good for some things and very not good for most of the cases people use it.
Yeah, that's fair. So let me just add to that, just as we're on this
Yep.
topic. What about then organizations where you have, I guess, more self-entitled or self-titled design researchers, where all they do every day is just usability testing day in, day out? And I use the phrase wireframe monkey, but like usability test monkey is another one if we're using these primate terms here. But why is it that companies are quite limited in their tool set? And obviously your book gives loads of different examples, but like from why is that?
Um, I think it's just knowledge. Usability testing is definitely sometimes complicated to do if you don't know what you're doing. But I think that after every kind of reasonable person, after 3 hours of training, could do a pretty decent usability test. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be decent, and you'll get a ton of insight from it. And it's very tactical in nature. It's very clear. The benefit is very clear. Oh, they couldn't do this. Okay, let's improve this process. Let's see if they fine. Okay, that's how we should design it. The problem starts with kind of not knowing what other methods are there. Is that you're trying to kind of hit every or any nail you see with the same hammer. Okay, usability testing for this, usability testing for that. It's not always the best method for, again, for the question you're trying to answer. It really matters what you're trying to answer. If you're trying to answer, who is your object, usability testing is probably not what you should do. Um, that said, usability testing is excellent for some other things. And if you're kind of in a stage where usability testing and is relevant, and you know what it gets you, and you do it relatively well, it's extremely beneficial. So it's easy to fall kind of into the trap of, okay, it worked here, why won't it work there? Um, so I think knowledge is the barrier. If you only knew that there are other methods that are not necessarily harder, you just need to know them and kind of practice a little bit, then you can get better answers that you can trust.
No, that's super helpful because I get a lot of case studies and maybe you get a few portfolios come your way as well. And, I don't see a lot of card sorting. I don't see a lot of tree tests, but sometimes they can be incredibly powerful. They can
Yeah.
really change the whole course of a product. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that as well. By the way, if a researcher is coming up with a portfolio, they know that hiring managers don't have a lot of patience, and
Right.
usability testing is used a lot, so they will show a usability test. I can understand that.
Yeah.
I think an experienced researcher would at least know when, I don't know, whatever you mentioned, tree testing or card sorting,
Right.
they would
Right.
know, um, when is the best time to do that. What question would benefit, and then the kind of the technicalities of actually running the thing.
That makes sense. I'm going to pick up on a word you said there. The hiring manager. I think
Yeah.
you said something like is tight on time or tight on budget,
Hmm.
and wants results quick. And I think that beautifully pulls into the next sort of discussion on lean and lean UX research. And
Yeah.
I, yeah, to those that maybe aren't as familiar with the book, Lean UX, there's 2 out of 5 principles I will mention, but one of them is early customer validation over releasing products with unknown end user value. So we're just throwing it into the wind. And the last one, the 5th one, is actually nimble design over heavy wireframes, comps, or specs. And so I guess the kind of linking to that you mentioned about, we want it fast. We don't have time to kind of do this big, fancy study journal, just go and do a usability test. I've heard it before. Well, I guess where do we get that balance right of trying to argue and, try and be like, no, we need more time on this, or, we can't rush analysis, or, you know, when it's perceived as just a slow trudge, or it's just taking too long. How do we get that balance right, Tomer? What's been your experience on that, getting the right balance?
So first of all, and I don't think it's related to lean, though I think I specified that as a principle as well. And I used that word at least 10 times since we started talking a few minutes ago. Questions. Really, really important to align with the team on what questions you're trying to answer. What is the knowledge gap that you have? Um, once you have those questions, you can become lean because you only have eyes for answering this question. Now I know the kind of more experienced researchers, when they hear me, but you in many cases you learn from research more than what you plan to learn, which is always true. But if and you know, take those learnings, put them aside, use them some other time. But when you're starting a research project, you need to be really focused on what is it that you're after. Kind of sniff and smell the answers to your questions, or to the questions that you agreed on with the team. So this is, to me, the first thing that would make you lean in a way. Focus on, and don't waste your time on anything else. Focus on the question. And any given research study can have, one or two or three, but it's around these numbers, questions, and that's it. Now, in terms of the methods, I can't say that there are lean and of lean, but lean or fat methods,
Fat, chubby.
whatever. Um, I would argue that every heavy, let's call it heavy, every heavy research method or technique has a lean flavor. Uh, there used to be an exercise I did on workshops with more experienced researchers. Okay, how would you answer this research question? And they, I don't know, whatever, interviews with customers. And then I would say, okay, what would your answer change if you had 3 months to complete that, 3 weeks, 3 days, or 3 hours to come up with an answer to the question? And people who don't have this mindset of being flexible will say, no, that takes 3 weeks, or it takes 3 months, and that's it. But um, if you take some shortcuts, I think you can do a lot even in 3 hours. Uh, Stuff at Google, sitting with the product manager in the morning, agreeing on, kind of aligning on what's the question, what are we going to launch. In this case, I think it was a user testing study or something like that. What is it that we're going to ask users to do or to answer? Uh, by noon, we had agreement on that. Lunch, and then I configured everything on user testing. At 3 p.m., we had our videos and we watched them, and like by 5 p.m., we were ready to go home with our conclusions. So it's not 3 hours, but it's not far from that, and you can definitely gain a ton from something like that that takes a day.
Yeah,
Yeah, a usability testing, you can go to, I know that there are agencies that you can go to. They will run the perfect usability test for you. And I'm not being sarcastic here. They will do an excellent job. It will just cost you several thousands, if not more,
right.
and it will take its time. Um, and again, there's room for that sometimes, but sometimes when you want to be lean and mean, and nobody's going to wait for you. I think this is where it's coming from. It's just nobody's going to
Yeah,
wait. So to me, kind of the definition of research is not just kind of coming up with those insights about users. It's also providing these insights to the people who need it when they need it.
right.
And that, to me, is gonna lean, because you're focusing on what matters, and only do that.
Yeah, 100%. And that kind of links to the nimble design, I guess, pillar of Lean UX, is that, you know, maybe the goal isn't to create a 40 to 60 page report, and need all of this extra stuff. And I think that's why I like your sort of one-page plan in your book,
Yeah.
because it just is like, what are the bare necessities? Like, who's the background? What's the goals of the users? What methodology are we going to use? What are we going to get out of this? Let's do it. And it's a simple one pager, and yeah, learning plans or the research plans is so important. And yeah, I think that's good for people to hear, because I think this is my question. This is personal. This is not in my notes. This is just one I thought of just now, Tomer. So
Hmm.
there's I would say, in the sort of, and I'm only kind of 2-3 years into kind of a UX research, fully research role. There's no design in my capacity. So I'm noticing there's a big split between UX researchers, um, and it's to do with academia. I would say that academic UX researchers are, maybe a lot more inclined to, well, maybe because they understand more sort of statistical methods, or they know the right formats and stuff. Whereas in the software world, or the SaaS world, that always isn't, a PhD level of knowledge isn't always required. And so I am seeing this differentiation. And what's your thoughts on sort of academic UX research versus just user research? Um, I've got a question mark on that.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to have PhDs doing research in industry, um, after kind of internalizing how it works, that you need to provide those insights to the right people at the right time, um, while knowing what compromises and understanding the compromises that you're taking. Uh, Somebody who's not a PhD can do that, but the PhDs, it doesn't have to be a PhD; they could have masters as well. But somebody who was, formally trained on user research knows a lot of things that other people don't know. So they and I would probably summarize that in kind of, they know the why. When they see somebody behaves in a certain way, they don't report, okay, they did this, they did that. They say they did this, they did that because of a certain, I don't know, cognitive psychology theory that explains it. And I think it matters. It's important. It's very hard. It's not their opinion. It's based on kind of the knowledge that they gain. So it's very easy to learn how to do usability testing. But if you learn how to do usability testing and you have that kind of cognitive psychology background, you are very well versed in why things happen in front of your eyes, not that just they happen. So instead of writing, 4 out of 5 users didn't understand this, we should change it. You can say 4 out of 5 people didn't understand it because blah blah blah. Um,
Yeah, that's
and
helpful.
and then and then it's also helpful in coming up with a solution, because if you know why things happen, then your solution is better, or the designer's solution is better.
Appreciate that. I got a freebie there, so thanks for that. Um, yeah, so just through then, just moving on, I'm just aware of time and wanting to just get the most out of this session and benefit. You talk about, I guess, the concept of creating an insight, and we talked
Yeah,
about starting with good questions, but we can't just answer the questions, and there needs to be a way that product manager can easily access that and make decisions based on that. So
yeah,
I mean, they need to be actionable, right? But you've got quite an interesting structure that I've seen. It was on an old Medium post back in 2016, I
yeah.
think. The UX Nugget formula. What is that? And I guess, have you developed that any further? Just for those listening who've maybe not read the blog post, what is the Nugget formula?
Um, the nugget is a tag. I define it. Let's see if I remember the definition by heart. It's a tagged observation supported by evidence. Okay, so three
Yeah.
components there. Observation. What is it that I saw or learned? What is the behavior that I observed? And now you understand happened. So that's the observation. And then comes evidence. I am a big fan of recording everything, and to a point where if a research participant or a potential research participant does not agree to be recorded, with all the kind of explanations that we're not going to use it, we're not going to use your name, blah blah blah. We'll keep your privacy, but if they accept that, um, then a recording is a must. If they don't agree to be recorded, then I don't use them. um, and the reason is that, to me, the currency of user research is video. When a product manager, an engineer, an important decision maker, when they see a user struggling with something they created, there's no way they're not gonna want to fix it. No way. You don't need to say anything. Just play a video, have some popcorn. That it will. In many cases, the opposite happened to me. They got up and wanted to go fix it right now, and I said, no, no, no. That's just one person. We need to see if it happens again and again and again. But I think it's critical to have evidence. No more he said, she said, my notes say this, your notes say that. there's evidence, there's proof that um, what you're saying is true. Very hard to argue. And the last component is tagging. I think is only it's only relevant in the context of um, what I kind of called atomic research, where you don't write reports, you report, if you will, on uh, nuggets or individual insights, and then you compile out of them answers to your questions. So tagging is really important there, and tagging could be about what you see, about the experience, about the experience kind of vector, whether this is positive or negative, and so on and so forth. Um, so that's a nugget as I kind of defined it in the
And
past.
it's powerful. I'm guessing you've used that before, and that's brought change. Where did you learn this? Or another way I could say that is, where have reports gone wrong for you, so that you thought we need to make this more
Oh,
punchy and powerful.
I think it was about efficiency. For years, I think the realization came to me when I was with Google. Um, it was like we're losing a lot of insights because we write a report and then it goes to pick up dust on a either physical or digital shelf. And you can create, I talked with interviewed a lot of researchers about this, and somebody told me, I created in the past year, I created 60 reports in and then and then the VP comes and asks me, what do we know about how our users use something? So first I need to go over the list of these reports to see if there was a study dedicated to answering that question. In most cases, the answer is no. So now I'm going back to what you learned from research that is not the main kind of question you wanted to answer. And then I need to go into every report. Some people called it fishing expeditions. Every report and see if that thing that the VP was interested in is something that appeared there. Did we learn something about that? So I need to scan 60 reports again and again and again to find out something that is there. I know it's there. Um, so this is where it's coming from. It's just that reports are disconnected and disconnected from the realities of day-to-day work. Um, and then when you think of it, you can expand that more. Researchers are not the only ones doing research in an organization. Whether you call it research or not, product managers are talking with users, marketing is doing surveys and market research, and support is hearing a lot of things, a lot of feedback that is very beneficial for researchers to know, for anyone to know in the organization. And then I started thinking, okay, so here's another silo problem. Everybody's happy to share their reports, but again, it's more reports, so it's not really helpful. So if everybody contributes to one database of nuggets or insights, then everyone can benefit from that very easily. So that's where kind of where it came from.
No, I love that, because yeah, you don't want dust on the reports, but you also want to democratize your data. What
Yeah.
software are you using for that now? Because I'm assuming you don't have your own custom built SQL table, and all these structures. Is there any sort of preferred software that does sort of research repositories well, from your experience?
Um, I can't say I use them all, so I maybe there is, and I don't know. But when I switched from Google to WeWork at the time, there was none. So we built our own. These days, I'm not using any kind of commercial tool dedicated to that. I'm using Monday.com. So it's not an SQL table that I customize, but it's a product that's being used for completely different things that just has the capabilities that I need for that. So I'm using it. Monday.com. If you don't know, it's I would call it kind of project management, task management
Yeah.
tool. So I'm kind of we're twisting its hands to do that for us.
Yeah, yeah. It's I guess keep it lean, right? Why borrow these
That
expensive
wasn't the
tools for
reason.
this?
That it
Yeah,
wasn't the reason. And Monday is not cheap, but we have it
yeah,
anyway. Um, and it's just I was looking for something that really meets the needs, and I
yeah.
found that you know, I like doing things on my own. Um,
Yeah.
it's not that I found a product that does everything and said, I need to do this myself. I
Yeah.
used a couple of products, but they were good, but they were not giving me everything I needed. So
Yeah.
I thought with a little manipulation on Monday, then we can make it happen, and it's working. So
No,
why
good
not?
to know. Good to know. Well, just as we kind of move into question time, there's been a few questions, Summer, that's come through.
Yep.
Um, if you look back, you'll see that Justin's been the most active, so points for you, Justin. But I'd like to maybe just focus around asking the right questions. And a way I guess we can answer that and talk about that is by talking maybe about the wrong questions. I've got a couple of bullet points you've written in your book, so I can save you some time with that. But maybe you could zoom into then specifics if that works, Toma, for you. Um, but I think rather than focusing necessarily on the tools, we need to focus on asking the right questions, Tomer. So you said here, like, don't ask about, repeated behavior. Don't ask users for their opinions. Don't ask them about maybe
Oh,
an average or behavior. Am I getting that right?
no.
About general,
No, 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 no. I know where it's coming from, though.
sorry,
This is
maybe I'm
from
misquoting this one.
the chapter about experience sampling, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Okay. Okay.
Um,
So
and
I picked that
experience
up wrong,
sampling is
maybe.
it's a very specific method, and you only get to ask one question there. Ask
Yeah.
your participants one question, and the guidelines that you just went over are for that
Yeah.
question. So um, it's not the first time that people are confused by that. So that's kind of feedback for me. But
That's my bad then.
but I would say when it comes to questions, the first thing that I would recommend or kind of try and help people understand is that the research questions that you and your team agree on that a study would go after are not necessarily the questions you're asking people during, let's say, the research itself, it's interviews or whatever it is. Not necessarily the same. So it's okay to have a question that represents a knowledge gap. I'll give you an example. If you
Sure.
have a question, okay, what do people need? So, what do people need is a huge question, a good question that represents a knowledge gap that we might have on a team. But you're not asking a research participant, okay, tell me what you need, because the bad thing about asking it is that first they'll have an answer because they want to help you, and the other bad thing is that that answer has nothing to do with what they need or any reality whatsoever. They're not trying to lie to you or sway you from the true answer. That it's just, and I say they, but it's all of us. We don't know what we need. Um, we know what we want very well, but we don't necessarily know what we need. So we need to ask different questions. Or not even ask questions. Sometimes we just need to stand in the corner and just watch what people do and say without asking them anything.
Yeah.
Um, which is complicated, but it's a way to answer the same question that we have of related to needs.
So what's a good example that you've maybe used in the past? So you have, we've got customers X. Let's say that we work at a garden center, and so we've got a range of different retail customers, and we say, what do they need? What does our store need to give them? You know, when we say that, what are good customer focused questions going to look like? Just as an example.
So the best, and I'm known for saying that, and I'll say that again. Um, the best predictor of future behavior is current behavior. So I don't know the store you were referring to, but for whether it's digital or physical kind of brick and mortar store, um, just watching, observing, or asking about how they do things today. How do you decide what to buy? How do you evaluate whether a product is high quality? So you don't ask them what they need, but then they might say, okay, about the high quality. Okay, I'm looking at reviews. There need to be at least 300 reviews. It needs to be above a certain number of stars. I need to touch the thing with my hands and feel it. And so then you are pretty much understanding what they need. because this is what they do. Um, I can't remember. A friend of mine once told a story, funny story about how people make decisions, and he said, I wanted to buy a car. I did my research for 3 months about which car to buy. An hour before I went to the dealership, I called my friend and asked him if he wanted to come with me. He said, "Yeah." We went together to the dealership, and then I talked about the car that I wanted to buy with the person there. And then my friend just commented, "Why don't you buy that red car there?" And that's what I bought. And my friend didn't do any type of research. But then, okay, so now you understand from this story the need is, I don't know, approval from your friends.
Visual,
What
see it right
what
then and there,
other
maybe.
what
Yeah,
other people think about the car, the color of the car,
right,
um,
right.
and it's thing that came up in the research that makes complete sense that you would do, but that's not how you made the decision. So
Yeah,
understanding deeply how things are happening today is going to be very helpful in designing something for. It's funny to call it a future need because it is a need that people have, um, and they do something about it. Different word I use instead of need is a problem. They're trying to solve a problem. Then, if you understand everything about that problem, you'll understand what they need. So you just need to
powerful.
ask.
That's powerful. That's powerful. If we were going to cut up the show into like a 1 minute chunk, that would be definitely the slam dunk line there. So helpful.
Yeah, you have your trailer for the video after.
We have it right there. Yeah, no, it's awesome. So, folks, feel free to ask questions. But I was just going to maybe throw in one here. So, for junior UX designers as a generalist, but specifically researchers, what advice would you give to them about asking good questions, other than go buy your book? But what advice would you give to them in terms of starting out in their careers, um, having good impact in terms of their
Yeah.
stories and their insights, the nuggets? And how would you recommend and keep advising them to kind of keep going and growing in their career? What's a good sort of motivation advice that you'd give?
Yeah. So I would say three things. First, keep educating yourself. Read a lot. Sometimes, I talk about atomic research. Other people talk about atomic research. Other people talk about asking good questions. Read all, consume everything you can to get different perspectives on the same topics or new ones if they're new ones. Don't ever think that you're done learning. Um, it's funny. I'll tell a little story from Google. At the time, we had forums, kind of professional forums, so a forum of researchers you can go to get advice about, I don't know, discovery research or a survey forum or whatever it is. We found that most researchers who go to these forums are very experienced ones. The junior ones who needed them the most were, I don't know, afraid, but were just not coming to these forums. So I would say, um, it's funny that how kind of experienced people really know how much they don't know, and junior people sometimes don't know how much they don't know, or are shy or afraid to kind of expose in a way themselves that they don't know. Don't be shy. It's perfectly fine, and it's even great that you want to learn more. So educate yourself all the time is, I would say, number one. Two is gain as much as experience as possible. So don't be afraid. Card sort, I never did that. Okay, no problem. I'll learn and I'll do that. And even if I'm going to be really bad at it, which we all were in the beginning, um, it's fine. So don't be afraid to kind of take care of the experience that you're gaining. And the last thing, which is it's probably the hardest, is, I would say, be very good about identifying opportunities for research. Don't necessarily wait to be asked to do research. Sometimes you're the best person to identify when research is needed. So, if you sit in a meeting and you see two teams argue about something, or two people argue about something, or you hear a team contemplating, should we do this or should we do that, or is it good or is it not good, or I think uh, that team thinks differently. These are opportunities for research, and you should be very good at kind of listening well and identifying and then proposing research to come out of that. And even if you're asked to do usability testing where you think it's not the right method, nobody's controlling your time in terms of how long a session with the user should be. Nobody's telling you, oh, this should be a 30-minute session or 45-minute session. So you can say, okay, the session is going to be 45 minutes. I'll do the usability testing in the first 25 minutes, and then I'll do whatever, what I think is right, an interview in the last 20 minutes. Nobody's going to tell you not to do that. And if they are asking you what is it that you're doing, tell them it's for the research department purposes. We want to learn things. You'll see if you're gonna if you're good at picking a method, you'll see that people will be more interested in the part that they didn't ask for.
That's golden advice, Tom. I really, really
So yeah.
appreciate that. It's really thorough, and I really appreciate that. And hopefully, the listeners all benefited from that too. Toma, where can people connect with you more? Where can people buy your book, Validating Product Ideas Through Lean User Research? Where can we learn
Um,
more?
all right, books. I would say I have three books.
Amazing.
So I have It's Our Research. This is for researchers who are having trouble gaining kind of acceptance for the research as a whole or for findings specifically. So that you can find on Amazon. You can also find the second book, Validating Product Ideas, which we talked about, also on Amazon. I think the best place to buy it is from directly from my publisher. I think it's even cheaper. Um, and even if it's not, you get more. You get if you buy the print book, you also get the ebook. So rosenfieldmedia.com. And the last one I published myself, that's Measuring User Happiness. That is on the Gumroad page. So gumroad.com and then search for my name and it will pop up.
Great.
I plan to add more templates there. So and maybe some
Watch
more
that
writing
space.
there. Yeah, exactly. And if you just want to drop, a question or something, so either Twitter, TikTok, um, yeah,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah, the usual
Yeah,
suspects.
all the usual ones. Yeah, well, Tom, I really appreciate your time. And yeah, I just hope that you have a great year ahead at your
Thank you.
current company, Anywell. And yeah, just that you thrive in there and yeah, enjoy good quality time with your family. But just for the time you've given us, we really appreciate it. And thank you so much.